Yes.
There's Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So that's what Pennsylvania is.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And I am Dan Simon, broadcasting from the Studio Simon headquarters at historic Bowman Field in beautiful Louisville, Kentucky.
Dan, I say that I am broadcasting live from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in Fort Collins, Colorado, but the day that this episode drops will be July 14, 2026. And the reason that I know that is because that is the day of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, and I will be in my native Philadelphia attending my first ever Major League Baseball All-Star Game. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am for this.
If there's one person that could begin to tell me, it would be you, Paul. So, is it safe to assume you're going to the other events as well? Home Run Derby and maybe the Futures Game, and I don't know, do they have celebrity softball or something like that?
Definitely going to the Home Run Derby, definitely going to like the All-Star Fan Fest that they have in the convention center. I know that there are other events around there like the Futures Game and that sort of thing. I think those are on Sunday. I'm not sure if I'm going to those or if I'm going to be hanging out with Todd Radom and Chris Creamer in Philadelphia. My first ever meeting of Chris Creamer, by the way. We've been working together for like 12 years and I've never met him. And we're finally going to get to hang out in Philadelphia in and around the All-Star Game festivities.
Wow. That's, I would have loved to have been in that meetup.
Yeah, well, make your way to Todd Radom's rooftop and we'll hang out. Although by the time this drops, all of that will have already happened.
Well, but it hasn't happened in
real life. Yes.
Right. So,
So we have done one episode already when this All-Star logo dropped. We talked with Todd Radom, the aforementioned Todd Radom, about the history of All-Star Game logos in Philadelphia. This episode is very exciting because I'm going to be speaking with Skye Dillon, who actually created this logo. And this is an interview that we recorded a little while ago. And we're just now sort of getting all the T's crossed and the I's dotted and the permissions and everything in order to actually publish the episode. And I figured, well, once we had that in order, let's just wait and drop it on All-Star Day proper. But when we did that previous episode with Todd, we talked about some of the logos that you had designed for All-Star Games. But what is your history with All-Star Games? Have you been to an All-Star Game at any level?
I have been to 2 Major League All-Star Games. When I first started working for the Dodgers, they sent me to an All-Star game. Ooh. God bless them. I didn't even request it.
Wow.
They just said, you're going to the All-Star game, and they put me up in like the Four Seasons Hotel or something like that. They paid for everything. It was great. So that would have been 1997, I believe.
Ooh. You missed the Philadelphia one by 1 year.
Yes, and specifically, I remember Mike Piazza was named the MVP of that All-Star game while I was working for the Dodgers. And I was tasked with creating a commemorative baseball celebrating that. But also then the other Dodger All-Star that year was a relief pitcher named Todd Worrell. Does that ring a bell for you?
Absolutely.
Okay. And they said, we can't just do one for Mike Piazza. We have to do one for Todd Worrell as well, even though Todd Worrell wasn't the MVP, and I'm not even sure he appeared in the game. But one of the things that the Dodgers were very good about is being very fair.
That 1997 game that the Dodgers sent you to was at Jacobs Field in Cleveland. But you said you went to 2. Where was the other one?
The other one was in Seattle, and I believe that was 2001. And then, yes, if I went to All-Star games at any other level, I have indeed. I've been to the California League All-Star game. Now, the California League All-Star game became the California League against the Carolina League All-Star game. But when I went, and we're talking about mid-90s, frankly, I think it was just the California League, like playing East-West or North-South, probably North-South, given the California League. So I remember going to that one. And that one, I believe they ran out of players, and that game had to end in a tie. That was in Lake Elsinore.
Okay.
Wait, wait.
Oh,
If it was, then I've been to two All-Star games there because I know I also have been to an All-Star game in Rancho Cucamonga. So I believe I've been to two California League All-Star games.
all right. So two Major League Baseball All-Star games, two California League All-Star games. You've got me beat. So far, I have been to one AAA All-Star game in Omaha in 2015, and then a couple of years ago went to the Fall Stars game of the Arizona Fall League. So definitely a fun vibe. That was the only home run derby I ever went to was the Fall Stars home run derby. I'm anxious to experience a Major League Baseball All-Star game. Going with my dad. It'll be the first for either of us, so I'm excited about that. This is a big festive celebration of my native Philadelphia. Obviously, we are in the semi quincentennial year, and so everything is happening in Philadelphia to celebrate America 250. And that includes this here All Star game. So when this episode drops, Dan, I am going to be knee deep in Wawa hoagies and Yingling and soft pretzels, and it's going to be just I am just so excited for this celebration of baseball in Philadelphia.
Paul, this I don't even want to say it sounds like because it's not sounds like this will be pure nirvana for you. Seriously, it's like everything baseball, all-star, your hometown. I realize you grew up outside, but in effect, you're a
The greater
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia area.
Right. Todd Radom, Chris Creamer. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm excited for you. I want to hear all about it, which I'm sure I will, or your listeners will.
Everybody is going to hear all about it for a long time. In the meantime, speaking of hearing all about it, Dan, we're about to go speak with Skye Dillon. Like I said, this was recorded a little while ago, and I'm very pleased to be able to bring it to you now. Speaking of Skye Dillon, my daughter Olivia is going to be enrolling at UC Santa Cruz, home of the Banana Slugs. Skye Dillon designed that Banana Slugs logo, and a Father's Day gift that I got from Olivia was a Banana Slugs dad hat with that Skye Dillon Banana Slugs logo on it. It's a terrific hat. So that's just a diversion, Dan. That is delaying us from getting from this fantastic conversation with Skye. We're going to go talk with Skye, and then you're going to be back with a Studio Simon Stumper, your second All-Star Game themed Studio Simon Stumper in 6 months.
I'm all about it. I'll see you in a little bit.
See you then, Dan. Welcome back to the podcast, Skye Dillon of the design firm Skye. One word, Skye, formerly Skye Design Studios. Skye, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Paul. Summer's gone by way too fast, but it's a pleasure to talk to you again.
Listeners of this podcast will remember you from episodes about the Holly Springs Salamanders, the Lancaster Stormers, the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars, the Tri-City Chili Peppers, the Staten Island Ferry Hawks, and then an episode where it was just you and me just chatting about all the work that you do way back in 2022. Today we're going to be talking not about a team, but about a logo that you created for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game in my native Philadelphia. I'm so excited to talk about this. I'm so excited that the All-Star Game is going to be in Philadelphia. I am going to do everything in my power to be there. Before we get into talking about the actual logo itself, we were chatting before we started recording here. I told you, hey, I was in Philly the day that logo was revealed, and it was fun, and I sort of knew that it was you. I didn't know for certain that it was you, but I had a pretty good idea that it was you who had designed that. And then you told me a fantastic story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll preface this story by saying that while we were certainly the hand on the project, it's an extension, really, a collaboration with Major League Baseball. Obviously, that kind of goes without saying. So, full credit in essence to Jason Yeadon leading their creative department over there, and they've really over the years been a great partner for us, being able to work with them and kind of bring their ideas to life in a way that's very collaborative and in essence very complimentary in terms of assisting them in any way that we can. And so when they asked us to help with All-Star, first for Atlanta and now for Philly, we couldn't be more excited. But yeah, so the story leading to the actual unveil event, for us it's all about relationships. That's really why we're in this business, is to serve our clients. And so I was in Atlanta, obviously great time at All-Star down there, thanks to MLB and their invite. And the week goes by so fast, Paul, that by the end of but by the time the game is over, you wake up Wednesday morning and it's like the, waiting for the dust to settle. And I have a lot of friends in the South just because I went to school down there. And so my original plan was, to kind of be a little bit unorthodox and drive from New Jersey to Atlanta. It's the middle of summer, bring my golf clubs. You don't really get a chance during the year, on our end, sports are so seasonal. We're working with all sports around the calendar. You don't really get a lot of gaps that, give you the opportunity to not necessarily take a vacation, but the closest thing to that. And so, that had been my game plan and just the way things unfolded. Long story short, Wednesday, Thursday, we're hanging out, and I get a text Thursday night from my contact at MLB, basically inviting me to come to the unveil in Philly on Friday. So it had been on our radar. They had kind of mentioned it a few months before when we were working on some of the prep for the launch, but that made it an official invitation to the point where I was like, all right, well, definitely, if you're invited, you should go, obviously. So that point, I'm doing the math in my head. How many hours is it from Atlanta to Philadelphia to be there by noon? So it turned into an overnight road trip just to get back, for the unveil. But it was a blast. Like I said, I'm bummed out knowing you were there, but I guess we, at least it's a point of reference for us as we talk through this.
I didn't even really know until that afternoon. Then I started seeing that all the festivities, they were emailing out about the festivities, and there was like a parade around town where they were showing off the All-Star Game logo at different sites around Philadelphia. We got to the game before the game for all of the festivities where they had all of, many of the Phillies' previous All-Stars come out and be involved in a big ceremony and everything. So it was cool for me as someone who is interested in graphic design to see the massive 3D version of the All-Star Game logo that was out on the field. We watched them wheel it out there, and it's blown up to these really huge proportions. It's on the sides of trucks, it's on the side of the building. It's everyone, all the game day staff were wearing it. I'm always sort of interested, and we'll get into the actual logo here. That's what this podcast is about. But I'm always fascinated from as a professional in this field to see your work blown up to that scale and in as many different media as that was. The 3D version on the field, projected, all that sort of thing. How can you get your head around that? Can you get your head around that? 45,000 people in this ballpark are looking at a thing that I did.
I mean, it never gets old, put it that way. It's always a thrill. I think in a lot of ways, it's for me now, it's the validation is seeing the fans react, when the mark comes out. We've obviously been working with it, for probably up to 2 years at that point, or whatever, a full calendar year at that point. So getting that fresh reaction is always fun to see. That's probably what is the most fulfilling from my end is, because if the fans are happy, then MLB is happy, and that's really our goal is to serve them. So as far as seeing it everywhere, I mean, that's just the nature of the business. I didn't get into this business because these were very high visibility projects. I did, it was for the love of logo design and sports, just at its most basic fundamental level. So this is kind of a fun extension of that when you get to start to see, the work in high profile places, especially, and this is a minor league podcast, from our perspective, I kind of earned my stripes, if you will, at the minor league level for almost 15, 20 years now. So, 5 to 10 All-Star Game logos, every year or so, all through my 20s and early 30s. After a while, it becomes, I don't know. It's almost like All Star as a concept takes on a whole new life when you've worked so closely with so many over the entire, kind of national landscape at all levels. So, and not that this was just another project from that sense, but it's like we've worked that muscle so many times, diving into a city, diving into the ethos of a club, really trying to bring out those, celebratory elements, things that can really take a fan and put them, make this a destination an event for them and really drive excitement and think about the club brand in a unique dimension that they wouldn't typically explore because you get that opportunity with an event brand. So for me, I think Philly was really, the culmination of a lot of those things. I mean, Atlanta technically the year before. The cool thing about Philly was one of the first all-star logos I ever did as a freelancer was the for the Phillies, the Reading Phillies, the
Oh,
All-Star Classic back in 2012.
huh.
And so for your good friends Jason and Casey at Brandiose. So that was, a full circle moment. I was sitting there with Nicole, my contact at our contact at the league, just watching the game. And that's when that moment was fun just because it was like whatever that was, 13 years before being in Reading with my dad, going to the game and it's a minor league all-star game. And now you're sitting at, Citizens Bank Park and like you said, surrounded by all these, amazing Philly fans and taking it in. The logo wheeled onto the field, as you said. Anything if a logo wheeled anywhere, it's pretty cool. So anyway, I mean, again, it's always have done this for the love of the craft, and so for me, that's the rewarding part. Is like it's really a thrill, the journey itself.
Just purely by happenstance, I'm wearing a Reading Phillies t-shirt right now.
Oh,
So
fantastic!
it's an audio
Not
podcast,
scripted.
so no one knows that. But my hope is that you and I will both be in that ballpark next year for the actual All-Star game. So that is, I'm going to do everything in my power to make that happen. Okay, I want to talk about this logo here. The 1996 All-Star Game logo had the Liberty Bell in it. The Phillies have a great big Liberty Bell neon sign, a big light up Liberty Bell out in the outfield. Their hashtag is Ring the Bell. The City Connect uniforms that the Phillies wear has a Liberty Bell logo, and this logo I would have bet a lot of money, and I would have been right. Has a Liberty Bell logo in it. At what point in the process is that determined? Is that sort of predetermined that the logo is going to have the Liberty Bell in it? Did the league come to you with that, or was that a collaborative decision?
I think it goes without saying, as you alluded to, it's a pretty obvious candidate for the primary element of the mark. I'll backtrack a little bit by saying that starting with Atlanta, the goal was to start implementing some kind of a consistent hierarchy to All-Star over the years. If you look at the prior 30 years of All-Star marks, a lot of them had consistent elements. Some were different. Some had a star, some didn't have a giant star. Sometimes the MLB logo was on top, sometimes it was on bottom. And the consistent thread was that it always celebrated the host city and the host club. But there was a lot of variability with, is All-Star Game on one line? Is it stacked on two lines? And it would just depend on whatever, however the design for that particular season went. And then that became part of the collection. So with all of the movement in terms of sponsorship and other partners that MLB has to consider now in terms of their brand, there was a desire internally on their end to really streamline what is the All-Star game? How do we present it? And how do we preserve a lot of that customization that makes All-Star fun for fans, that flavor of these host cities and clubs without diluting it to the point of just for the sake of brand standardization that you lose that heart, you lose that spirit behind it. So that was kind of a preceding part of the assignment for going into Atlanta and then ultimately Philly was, how can we create something that keeps that flexibility and unique nature of each club and city, but create kind of this subtle undertone of consistency that gives the sponsor its own clear space and place within the mark. You'll notice that in these marks moving forward, the MasterCard logo is actually embedded within the logo as opposed to just floating below it or beside it.
Mhm.
An example of how we had to really think about how do these pieces all come together in a way that's balanced and makes sense and everybody's happy, the league, the sponsors, the club, et cetera. It's a lot of moving parts. So when it came time to think about, all right, what are the elements in play? I mean, typically what you'll have is you'll have, obviously the lettering All-Star game, you'll have the MLB logo and the sponsor logo. Those are givens. The year and the location somewhere in the mark as a secondary. And then once we had landed on this idea of keeping a five-pointed star always in the All-Star game logo moving forward, that became something we had to obviously take into account. And then beyond that, once you've got all those pieces in place, then it's like, all right, what is that one feature that can immediately be recognizable to a fan on the street or, across the country that this is Philadelphia. So without question, the bell certainly is that initial thought and the leagues as well. But the beauty of our relationship is that there's always room to stretch and they give us space to explore and really stretch them. And at the same time, you know, they certainly bring lots of great ideas to the table as well. But through that process, the goal is always to explore, try some things that might not necessarily be the first choice, just to see where that takes us creatively, and then ultimately, see what works best and go down that lane. So we tried Independence Hall as, kind of the peak of that top point of the star. The other element of it too is this is all about conveying an attitude and a vibe.
Mm.
And, it's coinciding with the 250th anniversary for America. I still don't know how to say that word.
That's the what, sesquicentennial, something like
There we go. See, it's an easy word to say.
Something.
So I mean, when you think about it, Philly's already got a bit of, there's grit, there's attitude, there's this really, tangible city pride when you think about the ethos there. So this couldn't be something that was, passive. It had to be
Mm,
a mark that felt alive and felt like it was, really, in essence, centerpiece to this celebration coinciding with America. This is America's pastime. It's all happening in the same part of the calendar. So immediately the tone and the look and feel that we got from the league as far as the brief was, kind of modernized nostalgia in a way where we could take some of the gritty nature of, old parchment paper and duotone overprint overlays, things of that sort that felt historic and felt, like of a past time, but really push it into this forward facing kind of voice for the brand that was still appropriate for 2026. So taking all that into account, the visual that came to mind immediately was the idea of the bell in motion ringing, just because that would
mm.
have, basically invoked this sense of, right now the bell is obviously, I don't know, dormant. It's a static. Even the club mark, it's a just the silhouette of the bell. So the other thought behind it was this is an opportunity to, again, think about the brand from a different dimension. If the bell is always in this silhouette profile pose, this is a one-off chance to really take that same element, but give it to the fans in a different light, in a sense. So because this is a celebratory event, over the top in terms of America's 250th, this idea kind of immediately downloaded, where it was like the dynamic star and this idea of ringing the bell. So the star could be the first star ever in an all-star program now that they have all these motion capabilities and whatnot with branding, where the star itself could literally be moving behind the bell as it's ringing on broadcast, on motion, etc. So that's why the ultimate logo has that star. It's a little bit in perspective, almost tilted back,
Yeah.
really to kind of, capture that element of motion. But the bell really is the reason why it's like that. If you think about it, it's the motion of the bell, the energy of the bell emanating out that's causing that. But it's really, I mean, the way that we basically framed it was we always start with strategy, we always start with the hook. And for us, when MLB told us, like, this is a major moment for us, for the country, for the Phillies, obviously, like we have to capitalize on this in a way that does the event justice. This isn't just another event, another All-Star game. This is a big moment. So the thought that came is we're always trying to think of what's that authentic storyline that can capture what the sentiment of the league is and what they're trying to achieve, and sell it through to all the powers that be, if you will, that are stakeholders in the mark and the brand. And so this idea of 2026, All-Star 2026 being a declaration was the thought that downloaded. Declaration of
Mm.
Independence obviously is kind of, this big moment for the country declaring their independence. It's a very confident statement for the future. In this case, you could imagine, the same spirit behind the Declaration of Independence, sitting there reading, this is a declaration of all-star baseball in 2026, a declaration of Philadelphia, a declaration of fandom, a declaration of Americana, a declaration of baseball's best. Like it just kind of activates itself into all the different touch points that it needs to. But this idea of a little bit of an edge, but celebratory tone that's fitting for the people of Philadelphia and the club itself. Club with a little bit of edge, city with a little bit of edge, but heart, a ton of heart. When you put all that together, the bell had the most legs in terms of bringing that strategy together of a declaration. It's kind of a call to all baseball fans to come to Philly, more so than Independence Hall or some of these other Philly landmarks.
Or like a soft pretzel or a cheesesteak or
Soft
something.
pretzel, cheesesteak, with or without.
One of the things that you alluded to that I wanted to ask you about was when you're creating an all-star game logo, and as you said, you've done many of them at the minor league levels, and then you worked on Atlanta last year, incorporating all of the elements that you described and balancing all of the messages that you're trying to convey. So, not only the actual elements that you are obligated to incorporate, like the Major League Baseball logo and the MasterCard logo. So you're already incorporating two other logos into one logo. And then, of course, you have certain words, the city, the dates, and the star, and then something that brings, a personality and an identity to it. That's a lot harder than just coming up with a brand for a team, right? Like, I mean, balancing all of those things is a real challenge. How much of the work that you do on a project like this is spent? And I realize it's impossible to quantify this, so I don't know how you're going to answer this question, but how much of the time that you spend on a project like this is spent making sure that you're representing the league, the city, the team, and then something unique about this game? How do you balance all of those things and then still create like a simple iconic logo? That
The,
that question was as long
the
as the process I imagine that you're about to describe.
well, no, and I think I mean, to your point, you get into this business. I don't think a lot of kids dreamed of drawing all-star game logos as much as they dreamed of designing logos for teams when they were growing up. And then over the years, you come to recognize, oh, there's a lot of other elements of and really segments of sport branding that live under that bigger umbrella of each league. And so, for myself, I want to say I was in college the first couple of times I had a chance to work on an All-Star game logo, and it was everything you just described. It was like I remember trying to put it all together and thinking like, wow, this is a lot more difficult. There's a lot more. It's like we've elevated to a higher degree of difficulty in the logo design world. So I think that for me, what I'd love to do is immediately figure out what our mandatories are, figure out what if there are certain scale requirements or whatnot, you almost lay out, foundationally, what are those elements and where would they go, generally speaking, based on what the mandatories are from the client. And so in this case, kind of just stacking the MLB logo over a block of type. You don't even know what the type is yet, but just it's going to fill that space. And then certainly below that, the location and the MasterCard logo, and then some kind of a star element framing the whole thing. There's a lot already there. So I think, then once you see that's in place, since those are the mandatories, it makes it a lot easier to really reverse engineer, okay, what could fit in the remaining space that's framing all this other information? And very quickly, process of elimination, it removes a lot of possibilities, but it also, I think, inspires different things, like in this case, the bell being on an angle and moving away from the MasterCard logo because there was some negative space there. The idea of having the star be a dynamic star in motion, um, perspective and a little bit of italic to it to fill in some of those negative space areas, but also coincide with this, the story that we're trying to tell of being a very expressive, over the top, celebratory mark in nature that's connecting the bell to the star. And if it's in motion, the bell's in motion, it tells that story of them being united together. So I don't know if I'm answering your question 100%, but I think it's more of like defining what we can and really nailing that down and then letting that, because you don't want to spend your time exploring a bunch of things that ultimately wouldn't work based on now you've laid in the all-star text and it covers up half of whatever the icon you were going to use. You got to toss it.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this would work really great if we could put the MLB logo below the text because we need the space above it, but oh, we can't do that. So, and obviously every All-Star game logo is different. Different leagues have their own requirements, different leagues have their own approaches, and some don't even call them All-Star games. NBA just says All-Star, for example. You've got minor leagues over the years that will introduce a brand new word, All-Star Showdown, All-Star Classic, All-Star, you name it. So there's always nuance depending on what the brief is from the client, but I think generally speaking, as a just a principle, the idea of defining what you can, knowing that those elements aren't going to move, it's a lot less frustrating, starting there than it is to design some amazing logo and then basically have to scrap it just because it interferes with those mandatories that the client's not going to budge on, obviously.
Is it different designing something that is for one singular event that will come and go, as opposed to like a team logo, like the Holly Springs Salamanders, for instance, that you hope will be around for many years?
Yeah, short answer is yes. There are different assignments. There's different objectives to what they're trying to achieve. Our good friend Todd uses the term "it's a moment in time."
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me when I was coming up, and would try to pick his brain and stuff. Just had always admired his work growing up, and and some of the first conversations I had with him, I just that phrase always struck me, where it was like this really is a moment in time that you're capturing both for the fan but also for history. These sports are really, there's a historical element, a legacy element to them. Taking that into account, there's certainly different objectives that you're trying to achieve with an all-star game compared to a club identity. And again, it's different for each league. I mean, you've seen there's nuance to how some leagues approach them, where some are more standardized than others. And so part of that again comes back to the strategic approach of, collaborating with the league and determining, all right, what is the smart approach here for your fan base and for what you're trying to achieve? Is it more standardized or is it more, distinct year to year? Again, letting that strategy ultimately drive the objectives, then that makes it much more of a clear assignment in terms of, are we trying to create a mark that feels, very much in line with the timeless nature of a club identity, or are we trying to really push the boundaries, be something that matches whatever the trends of the time are, if you will, and really lean into that customization and seasonal element of it even more.
Last question. Was Rocky ever discussed as a visual element?
Potentially as theme art, never as the logo itself.
Yeah.
But and that's another piece we didn't mention, was just the beauty of All Stars. You've got not only the mark, but you've got the theme art, and they all work together. And so, for this particular project, the league had a very, very clear vision of what they had envisioned that angle for the theme art being. So we were able to kind of design both theme art and logo in lockstep along the way. So it became much easier rather than doing one first, then the other. It streamlined the process that much more. But that was where it became much more obvious as we started to design around different elements in the logo, where it said, all right, Independence Hall is a great element, but it works much better as a theme art piece with fireworks bursting behind it, illustrated, in this kind of old duotone style, if you will, but really let the bell be centerpiece for the mark itself. Not that we can't still have the bell as theme art, but that's where we really determined, all right, what are those Philly landmarks that we want illustrated? And then we did a bunch of patterns around stars and stripes. The goal was to connect the All-Star game to America's 250th birthday, knowing that those two events are going to be coinciding in mid-July next year. And the city wanted there to feel like there was some cohesion between the two. And so, again, from a strategic standpoint, what is the common thread between Philadelphia baseball All-Star game for MLB and Fourth of July, Americana, USA? The star in the Phillies logo, the star on the American flag, that is the one common symbol between the two, aside from the colors, red, white, and blue. So that was another justification for this idea of the star really being that foundational element that everything else was built around. And the reason we called it the dynamic star was because it had to really come to life in all of these dynamic ways. It wasn't just one singular star in one position. It had to adapt to all the sub branding for the event with the, workout day, home run derby, things of that nature that feature it. But it also had to adapt to the event itself. It had to work in the theme art. And if we're trying to convey this idea of energy and motion and, just the attitude of declaration and a bell ringing, that idea of having the star come to life, where you're taking that star from the Phillies logo, extracting a star from the US flag, boom, putting the two together. Now you've got an element that tells that story. You can tell that story to anybody and it makes sense, but it's not contrived. Like, it's coming from a very authentic place and can kind of show through for the entire program.
Skye, thank you so much. This has really been fun to talk about this mark and have a little bit of a different episode today for Baseball by Design. Where can people find you and all the work that you're doing online, on the socials, that sort of thing?
So our website is skye.design, skye.design, and Instagram branded by Skye, and Twitter X skye.design as well, I believe.
Okay, well, I'm sure people will know when they have found you. Skye, thanks so much. This has been a ton of fun.
You got it, Paul. Thanks.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time for Studio Simon Stumpers, in which Dan Simon brings us a trivia question every single week, and this week is no exception. Dan, what's it going to be? The answer is Mike Piazza.
You're going to have to name a major leaguer, but it's not Mike Piazza. Let's first find out what you know about the history of the All-Star Major
Mm,
League All-Star game.
okay.
Do you know when and where the first game, All-Star game was?
I know that speaking of our friend Todd Radom, he says that the All-Star game that was in Philadelphia in the 50s was the first All-Star game to have a real logo. So it was prior to that. I'm going to say that the first All-Star game, I'm just taking a guess here, Dan, was in 1946 in Brooklyn. That's a wild guess. If that's right, I'm going to play the lottery right now.
Don't play the lottery. The first All-Star game was played on July 6th, 1933 at
Uh,
Comiskey Park in Chicago. Here's
mm,
a few more Major League Baseball All-Star game factoids. Did you know that from 1959 to 1962, they played two All-Star games per season? Did you ever hear
mm-mm.
about that?
No, I did not.
Well, they did, I swear to God.
Okay, I believe
Uh,
you.
All time, the American League has won 48 games. The National League has won 45, and there have been two ties. First one was in 1961. The game ended 1-1, called after 9 innings due to rain.
Oh.
And then the other one was 2002 when both teams famously ran out of players, or at least ran out of pitchers.
I consider that game to be Bud Selig's enduring legacy.
Well, he's got other legacies too, good and bad. And today, tie games are, of course, decided by a swing off, which, if anybody should know that, it would be you because it happened just last year with Kyle Schwarber going deep with all three of his allotted swings and sending the National League home with the victory. Although the final score of the game is still like they didn't get a run for winning the swing offs. They're the winners of the game, but the final score is a tie game score.
So the National League won 4-4 or whatever the score was.
Yes, whatever. I don't that factoid I don't have in front of me, so what the final score was. But speaking of going deep, our studio Simon Stumper today asks, who hit the first ever All-Star game home run? Now remember, the All-Star game started in 1933. So was it Babe Ruth, Chick Haffey, or Frankie Frisch?
Babe Ruth would be the obvious answer, but Frankie Frisch sounds like the perfect semi-anonymous all-star from 1933 who would do just that sort of thing. But Chick Haffey is a fun name too. The first Major League Baseball All-Star Game home run has to be from someone named Chick, I think, not Frank Frisch. Frank, is that the name?
Frankie Frisch.
Frankie Frisch. Let's go Chick Haffey, Dan.
This is one I thought you were going to know. I thought I teed this one up
Oh,
for you. Maybe I'm just a bigger fan of the history of the game than, the normal fan. Maybe not so much as Todd Radom, though, but fittingly, it's Babe Ruth.
wow.
He
I said too obvious.
It was a 38-year-old Ruth in his penultimate season with the Yankees and third to last season of his career. He hit a two-run homer into the right field stands in the bottom of the third, and the crowd, according to one account, roared in acclamation because that's what
Wow.
people did back then.
Yeah, they didn't go nuts. They roared in acclamation.
Right, and the American League won that game 4-2. So
Mm,
there you have it.
Babe Ruth. I've heard of that guy.
Heard of him?
Yeah. Speaking of baseball history, Dan, I didn't mention this as we started this episode, and perhaps I should have because it is a Philadelphia centric episode. But at the time of this recording, the Phillies just became the first team in the entirety of Major League Baseball history. I mean, I know that we love to talk about this, that the game's been around for 140, 150 years, whatever. In the entirety of Major League Baseball history, the Phillies just became the first team to hit go-ahead home runs in the ninth inning and win all three games.
Yeah, you know what? If I remember correctly, maybe last week's episode, we were talking about the Phillies and their late inning comebacks in
Yeah,
another one last night.
it's crazy.
It's the magic of Don Mattingly.
It's it's Don Mattingly. This team since he took over, it's been pretty wild. So anyway, Dan, I'm sad for both me and Chick Hafey that I was incorrect on this stumper, but I am glad that you and I get to talk every week for a Studio Simon stumper, and I appreciate all the work you do for Baseball by Design. And I hope all the listeners who are listening to this on the day that it drops are enjoying an All-Star Tuesday, hopefully knowing that I'm out there, hopefully having a great time. You never know what life's going to bring you, Dan, so I don't want to like jinx anything here, but my anticipation is that the day this drops will be a fun day for me.
It will be. By the way, you shouldn't feel too bad for Chick Hafey. Think about this. It's almost 100 years since that All-Star game. Not quite, but getting close to that. And here we are in 2026. Chick Hafey still getting name dropped, as was Frankie Frisch and Babe Ruth, of course. By the way, all three of those players, well, we know Babe Ruth played in that game. All three of those players played in and started in that game. So they were part of history, and we're still talking about them.
So don't cry for Chick Hafey.
Yes.
Dan, we'll see you next week.
Okay, I'll see you.